Sunrise, Sunset, the Jewish Family in Transition, and I'm Audrey Gordon. Today my guest is Holly Zeinfeld, ASPO certified childbirth educator. And we're going to talk about something today that is perhaps a little bit unusual on a show, but it is about the family. And it's about childbirth and how it affects the family and the new movement that's going on in this country about having your babies the way your grandmas used to, right? What's Lamaze?
Lamaze is prepared childbirth, and it originally started out with the concept of natural childbirth. Then it moved to painless childbirth and drugless childbirth, and it's lost all of those name tags, and it's stuck with prepared childbirth. And it's a teamwork approach to delivering your baby. It's a basis of preparation on an emotional, physical, spiritual, and a psychological level. And once you go in to have your baby, you feel that your body is fit through prenatal exercises and things that are shown in the class. You feel that you're emotionally supported by bringing in a coach. Could be the husband of the baby, it could be the mother, grandmother, friend, but you feel emotionally supported because it's not a nurse whose shift is going to change and leave you alone.
Mm-hmm. Is it usually a family member?
Yes, usually a family member. There are some rare instances where a neighbor or a friend who has gone through Lamaze assists.
Is it usually often the husband?
Most often it's the husband, right. And most often the husband is willing. He wasn't always willing. He was very often dragged to the Lamaze classes. And that was maybe 5 or 6, 7 years ago. Now, many times it's the husband who drags the wife and who says, you're going to do this, you're a coward, you have a low pain threshold, we're having this baby together.
Do you think that this is a trend in society where men want to be more participatory with their own children?
Definitely, definitely. I think that not only do they want to share the labor and the delivery, they want to participate in le boyer, which is a concept where they bring the newborn into the world by giving the baby a warm bath, thereby solidifying the bonding that they have with the baby. And it's not just the husband that wants in on the childbirth process, it's the other members of the family too. It's the siblings at home that are now finding a place in the childbirth field. They're being invited into the delivery room if the parents want it, if the hospital goes along with it.
Are you talking about if someone is involved in Lamaze, that they have permission then to bring their young children at the time of the birth?
Okay, Lamaze is prepared childbirth. It is breathing techniques. It is learning to relax. It is learning to distract yourself. It's learning coping skills to work with your labor. Lamaze is also information and education so that you can go back to your doctor and negotiate certain items. Le boyer appeals to me, I want it, talk to the doctor about it. Sibling participation appeals to me, talk to the doctor and see what happens. So it gives you a basis to negotiate items with your doctor. But Lamaze itself is really not connected to sibling visitation or le boyer. It just informs the couples of responsibilities, choices, and alternatives.
What are some of your hunches about what happens to families when they participate in the birth of a child?
Okay, hunches is a good word because I don't have the data to substantiate specific research.
Well, but you've had a lot of
I've experienced Lamaze myself.
Okay.
Okay, and I have been teaching it for 8 or 9 years. And my feeling or my hunch is that it bonds the family. It's way more than breathing and relaxing through your labor. It's the first thing that I hear from the couples when they call to announce that they've had a boy or a girl is, I couldn't have done it without him, meaning the husband. So right then and there, they've shared one of the highest and the most meaningful moments of their entire life together, and they'll have that with them forever. So it's my belief that it does unify the family in a time that is a really tender, maturational crisis type of time, because bringing a baby into the world just throws the entire family unit into a tremendous upheaval. So,
well, into certainly a tremendous change.
Right, right.
How does prepared childbirth help a woman to make the transition, which is also a tremendous change for her?
Okay, I like that question. From my own personal experience, going through one childbirth without preparation, mostly with drugs, doctor was doing me a favor and knocking me out, the gratitude and the pride that was experienced as a result of making the transition into mothering was given off to the doctor. Thank you, doctor, you gave me this wonderful son, and I was, wanting to get him the biggest bottle of scotch ever. The second time around, after experiencing prepared childbirth and feeling like Steve and I did it together, I then was able to look upon myself as a woman who crashed through barriers. And I had a tremendous sense of respect and pride. And I think it made that transition into mothering that much easier. I felt stronger. I felt, again, like I had broken down some of the myths and some of the barriers that had been set in front of me for many, many generations. So not only do you enter mothering with those good feelings, those nice, strong feelings, but you enter it physically with fewer drugs in your system, so you're bouncing back that much faster. And you feel good that you've brought your baby, your newborn, into the world in the best way possible.
Do you feel differently towards the child that you had through Lamaze than you do the child that you didn't?
I was much more relaxed the second time around. I was no longer a brand new parent, so the whole idea of delivering a child, rearing a child the second time around made it easier. And Lamaze definitely helped because, as I said before, Steve and I felt real close. The first time after delivering a baby, he said no more kids because I was given many drugs that created hallucinations, and it was a very undignified kind of a behavior on my part. The second time around, it was a very controlled, dignified, easy behavior. So naturally, there was maybe a little bit less resentment toward the whole experience of becoming a mother. And I think that that's what women are feeling now.
Is the Lamaze experience one that uses less medical procedure? We talked a little bit before about the episiotomy, the cutting to allow the baby's head out. Is this one that advocates less procedure?
One of the things that we stress in class is the idea of staying at home as long as you can before going off to the hospital, because when you're at home, you can distract yourself, you can be relaxed. You're not looking to a certain performance, like I must dilate to 3 centimeters within a certain amount of time, or the woman next to me is delivered and the woman on the left of me is already delivered. What's wrong with me? You're at home, you don't have that comparative measure, you're relaxed. So we do try and emphasize to the couples to stay at home as long as possible. I think the longer you're at home, the more mobile you are, the less anxious you are about being in a hospital, which has certain stigmas and certain connections. So I think that maybe there are less medical procedures involved. But even more important than that is the idea that the women begin dialogues with their doctors. Based on class, we always say, don't go into your doctor saying Holly said or my Lamaze teacher said, because that puts the woman in the middle between the doctor and the Lamaze teacher. But we tell them, based on stuff that I've read, doctor, what do you think about this? So there's more discussion. Many doctors who've never delivered without episiotomies, after dialoguing it out with women, will say, okay, I've not done it before, but we'll see what happens at the moment of birth. I'm willing to give it a try. But one of the things that I really stress in Lamaze classes, and I hope other Lamaze teachers stress this, is the notion of going for it. That you don't deliver that many babies, and when you do, you really want to make it a meaningful delivery experience. You're going to have those memories around, so you might as well have a set that you're proud of. And after every class, I keep telling them, go for it. If you like Le Boyer, stick with it, even though the doctor's going to off-center you and tell you it's insignificant and it doesn't really mean anything.
In other words, create the kind of setting for this great moment in your life that pleases you.
Absolutely, because that's what they have pride on. It's the participation. It's the, I did it. I took charge and I participated in that decision. I stuck with it.
You said that you prepare people physically and emotionally and psychologically and spiritually. What do you mean by spiritually?
Now that's a tough question. I don't know how much I like that one. I look at Lamaze as a very holistic kind of a concept, that the body and the mind have to be in harmony in order to deliver a baby. It's not just a uterus pushing a baby out or a woman having a baby. It's your mind telling your body to relax, to allow the blood and oxygen to go off to the uterus. And I think it's back to a natural concept that the body is meant to be doing this. And I think that that's a spiritual concept to me. I can't separate nature and spirituality. And I think probably that's what I mean when I say that Lamaze prepares you spiritually. There's maybe a certain faith.
Let me throw a little finger at you.
Uh-oh.
Okay?
Yep.
Just my own little thing. The Bible says in Genesis 3 that God sent pain of childbirth as a punishment because of the sin that Eve and Adam had of disobedience in the garden. What do you think about that particular statement?
I don't know, because I never bill Lamaze as painless childbirth. I tell them that the title of the book by Ferdinand Lamaze himself is Painless Childbirth, and it's not true. People want their money back when they read that book and then they go through Lamaze, because it isn't painless. There's pain, but yet with support and with breathing skills, relaxation skills, the suffering is taken out. The pain is there. And Irma Brombeck's description of childbirth is like taking your bottom lip and pulling it up over the top of your head. There's stretching, there's pain, and it's going to be there. So in terms of the Bible, yeah, you know, there is pain, but it certainly disappears the minute you see that infant and the perfection of the creation.
I guess what I'm saying is that those who are literal fundamentalists in terms of biblical interpretation might want to know that the pain isn't gone and that it's still there as it says it's supposed to be. But it's a different kind of pain. You're talking about physical pain rather than emotional pain.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I have another kind of odd question. How do Orthodox Jews handle the concepts of Lamaze, or do they not?
I teach in an area of Chicago, near Foster in California, at Swedish Covenant Hospital, where there is a heavy Orthodox Jewish population. And I don't have a heavy Orthodox Jewish population in my classes. They're scattered. They're few and far between. There are a few. I've had rabbis in the class from time to time. They seem to deal with it very well. Some of them that have a modern attitude. Others have a very basic, traditional view that this is not a place for them. They do not want to participate in the process. They don't want to see the sexuality of the process of childbirth. They do not want to see the pain and suffering, if that's their attitude
Are we
toward
talking
it.
about, when you say they, you mean the men?
Right, the men, exactly. Exactly. And the women feel that it's women's work. There are still, I think, plenty of Orthodox Jews that are very set in their ways in terms of the dichotomy, that it isn't a shared experience. It's roles, women's roles, men's roles.
Well, there's also a viewpoint that would say that to see a woman in these kinds of positions would be degrading to her, or you
Yes.
mentioned sexuality. Maybe we could take that off of Orthodox Judaism and talk about what is the sexuality of this experience.
It's part of the whole love cycle. Having a baby begins with conception and ends with the process of sharing the delivery of the baby. And that should be fitted right into the whole love cycle of the marriage, of the relationship.
I like the phrase, that it's a love cycle that starts.
It is. What I try and do in classes is not to have the couples look at this as 9 months of, you know, what's happening to me, and then 4 months of postpartum of what's happening to us, but rather as looking at it as a maturational crisis, a healthy crisis, a growing time for the family, and just fitting the whole thing right into their love-making cycle, as opposed to separating it.
Well, it's very Jewish to, first of all, want to have children, and secondly, it's also very Jewish to want to have pleasure, for the couple to be able to
and
pleasure
close family.
and close family, but for them to be able to pleasure each other, and you know, as part of the procreation of a child. I mean, it isn't Judaism does not abstain from the notion that sex can be pleasure and should be pleasure for the male and the female as well. What is some of the thinking about circumcision? I know we talked about that, and it can get pretty sticky, but maybe we ought to just air the issue, because it came as somewhat
and it's just recently become an issue. I've been teaching for years, and it was never, ever mentioned. But it seems that couples are becoming very aware, and they're starting to question any and all routine procedures. I'm going to digress for a minute, but just to give you an example, silver nitrate drops is a state law. It's put into the baby's eyes a half an hour after the baby is born, or within a half an hour. And this is to prevent blindness should the baby pick up any kind of gonorrheal infection coming through the birth canal, right. Couples are saying this is irritating to the baby's eyes. This interferes with that first half hour of alert awareness on the part of the baby and on the part of myself, which is known as bonding time. And do we have to have the silver nitrate? Is there another drug that we could use in place of it? Or could you delay it until the baby goes into its sleep cycle as opposed to the quiet alert cycle that it's born with? So that is a procedure that has become questioned. Circumcision is a procedure that has become questioned by all couples, not just Christian couples, but Jewish couples too are beginning to say, why? The baby is born this way. Can't I just teach hygiene to the baby? Why on the 8th day? Why do I have to have a party at my house? I'm not ready. I don't have my stamina built up. I'm not up to having, Aunt Sybil come over and, all these other aunts and uncles. So they are beginning to question it, and it's again a hunch or a feeling that some of them are doing it out of deep religious commitment. Others are doing it out of...
doing the circumcision?
Doing the circumcision out of commitment. Others are doing it out of respect for their parents, because their parents would never understand were they to reject such an entrenched ritual. And others are doing it because of hygiene, or because of how my kid will feel in the locker room when he's 11, 12 years old.
It is a basic belief that to be a Jew, male, obviously, is to be circumcised. I mean, that is basic throughout the religion. It seems to me that there are some major cataclysmic upheavals in the works if a significant proportion of Jewish women elect not to do this.
I agree. Nevertheless, as an educator, I'm not going to advise people that I think it's right to do it one way or the other. I'm just going to inform them that there are controversies going on, there are alternatives going on, and there are books and articles all over the place.
Can you give me some of the arguments about the controversy? In other words, why would someone say that it
was
not to circumcise a child?
I don't have the hard facts on it, but there are connections to cervical and penile cancer. There are connections to when you're doing a Le Boyer delivery, which is a non-violent type of birthing process.
That's the music and the soft lights?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And this is looking at the infant as a whole, complete human being who is making decisions and evaluations at the moment of birth as to what the world is like. And if it comes into a cold, harsh, bright, loud environment, it tenses up, and this is some of the things that it lives off of. It makes these decisions. I don't like it, it's hostile here, and so it begins its foundation on a very negative footing. If, however, a lot of effort goes into welcoming the infant from a long, hard